Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over an upcoming potential winter storm for portions of the interior northeast that might bleed down into portions of the coastal northeast. We're going to be going over what a couple of models are showing, and we're going to be generally tracking out the system, seeing where it's going to go. This isn't really that far out, it's only about 3 to 4 days out, but we have so much model uncertainty. It's really crazy how much the models have been pretty inaccurate this year and how much they've moved around this year. So if this is any sign of how the winter season is going to go with these models, it's definitely going to be a tricky one to forecast. But I'll be tracking all of those storms on my channel. We also have our brand new boomer bust city forecast, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at Burlington, Vermont. Yesterday we looked at Kingman, Kansas there, because they had a real situation where they could have been seeing closer to 4 inches of snowfall or as little as about half an inch of snowfall, so I chose them for our boomer bust forecast. Today we're going to be looking at Burlington, Vermont, because they have even a bigger snowfall differential on their hand. If you want to see that boomer bust forecast, make sure that you are sticking around all the way until the end of the video. And we're going to be going over your European, GFS, and Canadian model, all looking at what they're showing for this system. So here's the current National Weather Service page and the watches and warnings. We have some winter weather advisories for upstate New York, as well as a bigger area for portions of Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, and New Mexico. And those winter storm warnings are in the pink. And that's all from that system that's actually going to become our northeast system. It's going to kind of track like this. Now, we're also dealing with some freeze warnings in effect for, or actually I think those are freeze watches in effect for portions of Arizona, as well as some wind-related alerts moving through portions of the southwest, and a whole bunch of air quality alerts for portions of the northwest. Other than that, there's not a lot going on in terms of watches and warnings. So let's see how the system is going to play out on the models and track it out. Now, this is the GFS model, then we'll look at the Canadian model, and then we'll look at the European model and see what all three of them are showing. And now, we have that system down in portions of Oklahoma and Texas. We have rain on that eastern side, snow on the northwesternmost side of the system. And this would be by probably later or earlier tomorrow morning, so probably before most of you have woken up by this point. And then as we continue through the day on Thursday, this would be right around 12 p.m. Central Time. Moving through the day, Thursday, this would be by early Friday morning. What we're dealing with here is our system moving through portions of the southeastern United States, and it would be right here. It's a really disorganized system of showers by this point, but what's going to happen is we're going to see this low pressure, or some sort of trough really is a better way to describe it, dig down into portions of the northeast, and you'll see this one kind of head further to the south and to the east. And then as this system right here continues moving north and eastward, some models have this being intercepted by this system up to the north. So that system has a lot of cold air with it. If that system is able to move further to the south, we could have some sort of bigger issue to deal with, and that's what some of the models are doing. Now, here to be by Friday morning, and this is only December 4th, so this is only about 2 days from now, and there's so much uncertainty with this, with the models, that it's kind of crazy. It's very hard to get an idea of what's going to actually happen. Now, as we continue through, this will be by Friday night, getting through Saturday morning, and then into Saturday in the early afternoon, we have a very wound up, wrapped up low pressure system moving through portions of Virginia by that point, wrapped up isobars with some stronger winds all around that system, and we're dealing with some sort of cold air on that western side of the system. But what you're going to see is that your cold air is kind of set into the eastern United States somewhat like this. So your 32-degree line is still a little bit further to the west of the system. So that rain shield, or that precipitation shield, is not going to really reach into that colder air. It's going to be maybe a very kind of annoying for snow lovers 33 degrees and rain for many of these coastal areas if this were to be correct. And it would be a fairly windy day, so it would feel even colder, but it would still be mainly rain for these areas. But what the GFS model wants to do, is we zoom in here, is actually bring in some of that snow for portions of the northeast. So you can see that moving through, where we have some mixing on that northern side of this system, and it heads up into Maine and you're dealing with a little bit of snow by this point. This would be by Sunday, and it's pretty much all said and done with according to this model by Monday. Now let's take a look at another model because there's definitely a few different ways that this system can go. Here's the Canadian model, and this one is a little bit a lot bigger for especially New England and northern New England, but not so much for areas in upstate New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio. Those areas really are seeing pretty much the same result, which is not too much snowfall. So here's what the Canadian shows, and we're actually going to look at the total snowfall in just a minute. At the end of the video. So we have some of that snow on the western end of that system, which by this point is still down in portions of the south central United States, right down here, and that'll eventually be heading up to the north and to the east. And it's going to take a fairly similar track, but it's going to be that timing of the trough and that cold air that's going to really make the difference. So by tomorrow, as we get into the early afternoon, it is moving through portions of Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and then it's continuing to head eastward. We see that cold air with that trough dip down. So by this point, we're not dealing with too much variance within the model. We're still dealing with that trough digging in to the northeastern United States and the Great Lakes. We're dealing with that system further to the south. It is going to be a chilly day on Friday, and we're going to see that system move up to the north and to the east. But what the Canadian model does is kind of stick this cold air right here, keep it in place, and it's going to keep that cold air in place even as the system heads to the north and east. So your low pressure is going to be southeast of the cold air, but your precipitation is going to reach into the cold air and might lead to some overlap between the cold air and the precipitation, which eventually will lead to some snowfall. And let's see how that plays out. So we see that system moving up the coast. Here would be by Saturday early in the morning. Here's by early afternoon on Saturday. And right now it's looking fairly similar to what the GFS was showing. Not too much snowfall. Maybe just some lake effect snowfall by this point. But as you zoom into the northeast, you start to see more of that lake effect and even some mixing on that northern side as we get to Saturday night. And then by Sunday morning, you can definitely tell that we are ramping up that snowfall. The precipitation shield has increased into much of the that precipitation shield has reached into much of that cold air, which by this point is centered over areas of the northeast, and then it kind of moves back up through portions of New England. So the coastal areas of New England probably going to stay all rain for this, but areas inland might be dealing with some sort of snowy situation in some form or another. So here would be by Sunday morning, December 6th, on the Canadian model, and you see some very heavy snowfall for northern New England. And then as we continue forward, that low wraps around itself, and it brings more snowfall, and that snow doesn't get out of here until we get to Monday morning when it's just some lingering showers. Now, let's look at what the European model is showing for this event. And again, we still have that system out in the south central United States, still lingering throughout here, your low pressure over northern Texas by this point. And what the system is going to do is it's going to track up up through portions of the eastern United States, but what it's going to do is stay a little bit further and closer to the coast, and that colder will be a little bit farther to the south, so it will bring a lot more snowfall for these interior regions, which you'll see on this model. So the system heads up through portions of the eastern United States. We're dealing, this would be by Thursday, early afternoon, and then getting into the early morning hours on Friday. Still raining for all of these areas for the most part, especially over the southeast. And as we continue forward, the European model really develops this low pressure quite quickly, as you can see by this. So this would be by Saturday, early in the morning, and then here would be by Saturday, probably right around 8 or 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. We're dealing with some mixing, especially as you get further inland, and especially as you get away from the Great Lakes and as you get away from the coast. So this kind of middle ground here where you are dealing with some higher elevations for some of those regions, and that's maybe where you can see some snowfall according to the European model. But then it starts to get a little bit more widespread as we get to Saturday, right around your early afternoon, getting into the later afternoon, almost into the evening hours by this point on Saturday the 5th, and we're looking at some of that snowfall on that western end of the system over upstate New York and maybe getting into western New England. This would be an icy scenario where we would actually be dealing with probably some ice for portions of Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut there, and maybe even into upstate New York, if that were to be the case. And you can already see in those kind of magenta colors or almost those purple colors where we're dealing with some of that ice. So that could be a concern if the European were to be correct. And you see the system really doesn't give parts of Maine or New Hampshire as much, but it gives a lot of areas in upstate New York, Vermont, Pennsylvania, a lot more snowfall than what the other two models were showing. And then eventually that low pressure by this point is into southeastern Quebec, Quebec in Canada, and we're looking at that cold air kind of wrapping around on that southern side of there. So maybe some areas getting some snowfall who were originally all rain, and then it really gets out of here. You might see some lingering showers as we go through the day on Sunday and into early on Monday. So let's start taking a little bit of a look at this snowfall total. So here would be what the GFS model showed, and this is probably the least dramatic of any of these models. And we're looking at maybe over portions of Maine really going to be the bullseye, especially eastern Maine, where you're looking at maybe up to 6 or maybe 6, 7, 8 inches in some areas, a widespread 3 to 6 over eastern Maine. But as you get further inland and as you get further to the west, maybe just a dusting to a couple of inches in some of those higher elevations. Now, here's what the Canadian model does, and you see pretty similar to what the GFS model does over portions of the western northeast, I guess you could say, or on that left-hand side of your picture right there. But it really does amplify those amounts over portions of Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, where you're getting some areas in eastern Maine closer to 17, 18, 19 inches of snowfall. So those would definitely be some very dramatic totals. And then here's what the European model is showing, and you see the European model really hammers portions of upstate New York, Vermont, northern New Hampshire, northwestern Maine, with maybe up to 30 or 40 inches or more of snowfall in some of those kind of those two dots of I don't know what to call that, maybe a lighter blue there, where you're looking at maybe closer to 40 inches of snowfall in upstate New York, if this were to be correct. And I'm not saying that any of these models are necessarily correct. I'm just showing you the data and showing you what I'm looking at. Now, time for the boomer bust forecast. It's something that I've done once before on my channel, and that was actually in yesterday's video, and I think I'm going to implement it a little bit more. And if you have any suggestions on how I could improve it, or if you like it, or if you don't like it, let me know down below and tell me why, so I can kind of improve this, because it's definitely still in the beta stages of its development, and I'm definitely going to keep on working on it and adding more stuff to it as time goes on and as I get more suggestions. Now, here's your boomer bust forecast. I chose Burlington, Vermont for our city for today, mainly because Burlington, Vermont has the biggest range of what could happen. Now, on that low end side, we're looking at maybe just a dusting of snowfall, not too much snowfall out of this if that were to be correct, if a solution maybe like closer to the GFS model were to be correct. But if we have something closer to the European model, we're looking at maybe closer to 14, 15, 16, maybe even up to 17 inches of snowfall in some of those regions. And of course, my forecast, I'm not going to really comment on that just yet because it is a bit too early. We're still 4 or 5 days out, and with how bad the models have been, that seems very, very much further out than it actually is because of how uncertain these models are. So maybe within the next 2 or 3 days, I'll have my forecast out, but generally, we do have a very, very big boomer bust scenario. On that boom side, you might get close to 14, 15, 16 inches of snow. On that bust side, maybe closer to just a dusting of snowfall. And this is just based on me looking at the models, seeing what the low-end models are showing, what the high-end models are showing, and seeing what they're outputting for this storm. So hopefully you like the boomer bust forecast. I will be definitely using it a little bit more if you guys do like it, because I do think I have kind of a couple comments that you guys do like it. So if you don't like it, tell me why in the comments, and I'll definitely try and improve it. Or if you have any other suggestions of kind of cool ideas I can implement onto my channel, definitely I'll take a look at them, and I'll definitely try and implement them in the best way that I can. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.